This map shows the coastline of Antarctica, drawn 300 years before anyone discovered the continent. At least, that's what a U.S. Air Force colonel wrote in an official letter. Tonight, we find out if he was right. Istanbul, 1929. Workers are turning an old sultan's palace into a museum, sorting through centuries of forgotten paper. And on one dusty shelf, they find a torn piece of gazelle skin, painted with a map, dated 1513, just 21 years after Columbus first crossed the Atlantic. The map shows Spain, Africa, Brazil, and then, at the bottom, a long, detailed coastline that, according to some very serious people, should not exist. A coastline of Antarctica, a continent no human eye saw until 1820. Tonight, this parchment goes on the board as evidence. Two things to hold on to. First, one handwritten note, in the map's own margin, cracks this entire case. And almost nobody bothers to read it. Second, the detail everyone misses isn't on the map at all. It's something missing from it. And fair warning, this case will not end where you expect. October 1929. The Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, home to Ottoman sultans for 4 centuries, is being turned into a museum. A German scholar, invited to catalog the library, asks the palace director to hunt for old maps. And out of a bundle of disregarded papers comes gazelle-skin parchment. Brilliant colors, compass roses, ships, parrots, and a signature. The map maker is Piri Reis, an Ottoman admiral who learned the sea as a corsair, raiding beside his famous uncle. In 1513, he sat down in the port town of Gallipoli and painted the Atlantic world, the coast of Spain, West Africa, the islands of the Caribbean, the fresh shoulder of South America, decorated with parrots and monkeys. Only a piece of his world map survives, roughly a third, a torn fragment. But at the very bottom of that fragment, a coastline swings east and runs along the edge of the world. Within months, this forgotten parchment made headlines around the globe. But not, and this matters, not because of Antarctica, because of a note in the margin. Hold that thought. Fast forward to the 1950s. An American engineer named Arlington Mallory has a passion for old maps. One day, he makes a statement that sounds insane. The coastline at the bottom of the Piri Reis map, he says, matches Antarctica. And not the ice, the hidden land beneath the ice. Then a college teacher named Charles Hapgood sends the map to the U.S. Air Force. In 1960, he gets a reply on official letterhead. Lieutenant Colonel Harold Olmeyer writes that the bottom of the map agrees, quote, very remarkably, with a seismic survey of the land hidden under the ice of Queen Maud Land. An Air Force officer. In writing, Hapgood publishes a famous book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, arguing the map copies charts from a lost civilization that mapped Antarctica before the ice sealed it away. Even Albert Einstein had once written a foreword for Hapgood's earlier crust theory. Then came the aliens. A worldwide bestseller claimed the map looked like a photograph of Earth, taken from space. Soon, this torn gazelle skin was the most famous impossible object on the planet. There's just one problem with the Antarctica story. Actually, 3. Problem 1. And here's the detail everyone misses. It's not what's on the map. It's what's missing. Between South America and Antarctica lies 600 miles of open ocean, the Drake Passage. On the map, it isn't there. The mystery coastline is welded directly onto South America. No gap, no ocean. Problem 2, the ice. The legend says the map shows Antarctica's coast free of ice. But drill cores tell us Antarctica has been buried under kilometers of ice for millions of years. Not thousands, millions. Before cities, before human beings existed at all. And when modern radar finally mapped the true rock coastline hiding under that ice, it does not match the map. The famous Air Force letter leaned on one thin seismic survey line from 1949, a handful of soundings stretched into a continent. Problem 3, the map gets the world it knew wrong in a very telling way. The Caribbean sits twisted on its side, and one island, Hispaniola, is drawn tall, running north to south, exactly the way old charts drew Japan. Whoever drew these islands wasn't surveying from space. He was copying someone's beautiful, brilliant, wrong guesses. But whose? The answer has been sitting on the map for 500 years. To read a 500-year-old margin note, you need a quiet desk and a good candle. Pull up a chair, hit subscribe, and let's read it together. Here's what almost nobody does with the most famous mystery map on Earth. Actually read it. The edges are covered in handwritten notes. Piri Reis explaining his own work. In one long note, he lists his sources. About 20 older charts. Ancient maps passed down from the age of Alexander the Great. An Arab map of India. For new charts from Portuguese sailors. And one map, he writes, made by Columbus. Read that list again, and the spooky southern coastline starts to make sense. For 2,000 years, scholars believed a giant southern continent had to exist, because ancient Greek thinkers decided the Earth needed land at the bottom to balance the land at the top. So mapmakers drew it, century after century, an imaginary continent with a Latin name, Terra Australis. And modern map historians add one final twist. Trace that Antarctic coastline carefully, and it behaves like South America's own coast, bent hard to the east, curling around the bottom, because the Admiral was running out of gazelle-skin, an invented continent drawn on a bent coastline. No Ice Age fleet required. But do not close this file, because that same margin note hides real treasure. The map made by Columbus. Here's the story Piri Reis himself tells. His uncle, Kemal Reis, was a feared Ottoman sea captain. In 1501, his fleet captured Spanish ships, and on board was a sailor who claimed something extraordinary. He had sailed with Columbus to the new lands 3 times, and he carried a map, said to come from Columbus's own hand. Now hold on to something. Today, not one authenticated map drawn by Christopher Columbus survives. Anywhere. We have his letters, his journal, his charts, gone. Except, look again at the Piri Reis Caribbean. Hispaniola drawn like Japan? That is not a random mistake. Columbus died still insisting he had reached Asia, and on his maps, that island was Japan. The errors are fingerprints, which means this Ottoman parchment may hold the only surviving echo of the lost map of Columbus, a copy of the hand that redrew the world. Scholars still debate how much is truly his, but the possibility alone makes this gazelle-skin priceless. And the mapmaker deserves a case file of his own. Piri Reis spent half a century at sea. Corsair, Admiral, scholar. He wrote the Book of the Sea, a sailor's guide with hundreds of hand-drawn charts so good they were copied for centuries. In 1528, he drew a second world map, even sharper than the first. And his ending? Well into his 80s, still commanding the Ottoman fleet in the Indian Ocean, he abandoned a failing siege and sailed home. The court called it desertion, and the old admiral was executed in Cairo. His life's work was rolled up, shelved in the palace, and forgotten for nearly 400 years. Here's the part that keeps historians awake at night. What survived is only a third of the world map. Somewhere between 1513 and 1929, 2/3 of it vanished. Torn away. Nobody knows when. Nobody knows why. And the Topkapi archives still hold tens of thousands of documents nobody has fully sorted. Some historians quietly hope the missing pieces are in there right now. Misfiled. Waiting. Exactly like the first piece was. So, verdict time. Does the 1513 map show Antarctica 300 years early? Put it all on the board. The coastline is fused to South America. No Drake Passage anywhere. The rock coastline under Antarctica's ice, mapped by modern radar, does not match. The ice itself has been there for millions of years. And the mapmaker himself told us where his lines came from. Ancient charts, Portuguese charts, and Columbus. Not a lost Ice Age fleet. So we call it honestly, Antarctica, case closed. That southern coast is almost certainly Terra Australis, the imagined continent, probably wearing a bent copy of South America's own shoreline. The colonel was wrong. But before you file this under just another debunked legend, 3 real mysteries in this file stay wide open. 1. Where's the lost 2/3 of the map? 2. Where did the Columbus chart go? And 3. How did a 16th century admiral, working by candlelight from captured and ancient charts, draw an Atlantic so good that modern experts still study it with respect? Because that, not aliens, is the real headline. The map isn't impossible. It's brilliant. Verdict: Antarctica, case closed. The lost maps, case wide open. So maybe the wonder was never a lost civilization. Maybe it's this. 500 years ago, a pirate-turned-admiral sat at a desk in Gallipoli, surrounded by borrowed, captured, and ancient charts, trying to draw the whole world at the exact moment the world doubled in size. He drew islands sideways. He drew a continent that never existed, because the wisest people of his age swore it had to. And he still created one of the great maps in human history. That isn't a hoax to debunk. That's a message in a bottle from the age of discovery. And somewhere, maybe misfiled on a dark shelf in Istanbul, the rest of that message may still be waiting. The vanished are rarely erased. They're just filed somewhere we haven't looked. If you believe a mystery deserves evidence, not just a good story, then you're one of us. Tell me in the comments which lost document we should hunt next. The missing 2/3 of the Piri Reis map, or the vanished charts of Columbus. And subscribe to Vanished so you never miss a case file. Because the next one is already open. Another place, another disappearance, another trail gone quiet. The case continues, right here.